Hey, welcome. 3rd of January 2023. Happy New Year, my friends. Here we are. It's Chat with Matt. Half an hour or so on the Bright Light Beings Facebook group to talk about whatever might arise. Had a few comments, questions, requests submitted beforehand, so that's good. It's always nice when I know I've got something to talk about and I don't have to just talk off the top of my head. But yeah, first off, here we are. It's 2023, 2024. Did I say 2023 beforehand? I think I did. Anyway, it was 2024. It's definitely 2024, at least according to the Gregorian calendar. How much weight you want to put on that. But anyway, that's the convention. Hey, Sister Teresa, I was thinking about you just yesterday. Wondering how you're getting on and how your trip may have been. I'm pretty sure you've done that. Or at least the date for doing that has come and gone. But we can catch up whenever. But here we are. It's Chat with Matt. I've got a few things written in ahead of time. First one, I may as well just start there. Hey, Sister Debbie. Actually, before I get on to that, because this will feed into, I think, all of that. First thing to do is here we are, new year. Relax, right? Don't get too contracted around expecting everything to be different just because the Gregorian calendar has changed the last digit. Awesome. Of course, Peru was life-changing, but it was also good. Quite unquote. Yeah, every time we travel is life-changing. We don't get away from that. That's perfect. Happy New Year, Deb. So yeah, don't expect everything just to change just because the last digit of the date has changed and we're now in a new year. There is opportunity for making new change now. There is a sort of a morphogenetic field of change. A lot of people are choosing to change at this time, which is good. We can utilize that. But the point is not to get not to develop unrealistic expectations and then get disappointed and then throw the baby out with the bathwater, etc., etc. Change is a long-term process. That's fundamental. And we're going to get into this because Jen has asked again to continue the conversation we had from last week around big significant changes, transformations, and how long it takes, right? This idea that we can change things more quickly now, effectively, although we've always had the capacity to change things quickly. It's just been harder to do with the energy being so dense. The energy is becoming lighter, and so now we have the opportunity to make more miraculous changes, if you like, more quickly, but at the same time we're also dealing with our expectations around how long it takes for things to change. And in fact, some people, will hang on to the idea that things don't change, which of course is complete BS. But this is what we're dealing with, and so it's that idea, like we talked about last week, finding this balance between intentionally moving towards fast change and holding a realistic expectation of how long it's going to take, right? It's about having expansive expectations and desires and still maintaining a degree of relativity or sensibility. How do we stay real about this process? So we'll talk about that a bit. I was tempted to make some predictions about what we're going to see this year, but potentially that's a stupid thing to do, so maybe we won't do that. I tend to say I don't make predictions, but at some stage in the next few weeks, I probably will talk a little bit more, just so that people can be a little bit, not so much pre-warned, but prepared for things that can unfold. And I don't mean physically prepared, because again, that doesn't really matter. I mean more mentally, emotionally prepared, that I think we're going to see significant changes in our external structures this year. And that's a good thing, even though it's probably going to be a little bit uncomfortable. And so not to, quote unquote, freak out that things are going wrong when things get chaotic or things get stupid out there in the world. And, various authoritarian structures try and impose more control over us or influence the society in a way that, for those of us with our eyes open, seems incredibly backward. Anywho, hey sister Lolena. Anyway, let's get into this. Zena asked, before I get into asking Jen's question, they sort of dovetail into each other. Any insight into procrastination is welcome. Right, so the first thing with procrastination is just stop it. Stop procrastinating. I'm joking. No, understand, remember that skit, just stop it. Understand that procrastination is a survival technique, right? It's a fear-based reaction to uncertainty. We procrastinate out of protection. It's our way of protecting ourselves, is when we don't feel confident in the opportunities or the environment, that we don't want to do anything. We'd rather sit still and wait for more information than to, quote unquote, take the risk and step into action. So first and foremost is to understand that just because you're procrastinating, you're not wrong and you're not bad and you're not failing. And from there, recognize that procrastination is a fear-based coping mechanism that is very, very prevalent in uncertain times. So it is very uncertain out there. There is an immense amount of anxiety in society. I think we're all feeling anxiety. And I'm not saying we're all being anxious, right? But we're all feeling anxiety, because most of us who are sensitive are feeling the anxiety of society in general. And even though right now, in this last sort of few days, we've had this feeling of excitement with the new year, which is always buoyant, uplifting. The lead into or the go through Christmas and lead up to New Year, there was an incredible amount of anxiety in the atmosphere, if you like, and I do believe that will return, give another week or so. The point is not to identify with it, but to recognize that we're all feeling it, and it does have influence over us. And one of the ways that it influences us, when we're feeling the anxiety in the vibration of society around us, is we procrastinate. We shut down. We go into freeze response. We don't want to take risks because we're not sure what's going wrong. We're feeling the anxiety of others, and therefore it's very hard for us to consistently, consciously choose to feel safe when we're feeling the anxiety of others, right? To remember that we're safe, right? It's hard to feel safe when we're feeling anxiety, and it's even hard to remember that we are fundamentally safe as the being when we're feeling all of this anxiety. So therefore, it's hard to take actions that feel potentially a little bit risky. And that can be anything, right? And so making any decision gets harder and harder with this anxiety in the atmosphere. So be compassionate with yourself that you are procrastinating, and then consciously choose to work on your foundations so that you can consciously choose to remember that you are safe enough to make a decision, and that you are safe enough to deal with the outcome, or you are capable and competent enough to deal with whatever outcome arises due to the decision you made. Hey, Sister Maria, Happy New Year. That's the point, because a lot of us are very scared of making mistakes for whatever reason, right? Because it's been drummed into us that it's a bad thing to do. But fundamentally, mistakes is how evolution occurs. Mistake is how we grow, right? We make mistakes and we learn from them. That's the growth process. So trying to avoid mistakes is very counterintuitive to evolution, ascension, and spiritual growth. We have to make mistakes. So, get out there and start doing it. I encourage you all to go out and make a few mistakes today. Seriously, he said, laughing. Go and make some mistakes. Get out there, take the risk, to make some actions, try something, ask someone on a date, go up and talk to a stranger, do something crazy. What's the worst that can happen, really? Really? The worst that happens is you die. And is that really bad? Not encouraging you to be frivolous with your life, but most of the time you don't die. But ultimately, we're here to have experiences in this lifetime, not to get to the end safely, having made minimum mistakes. That's pointless, a waste of time coming here if you're not willing to make mistakes. So when it comes to procrastination, just remember, what's driving it. Be compassionate with yourself rather than critical of yourself, because that doesn't help, right? That just creates more stress. If you start beating yourself up for procrastinating, you're just going to clamp down even tighter around the fear of making the decision. The longer you wait to make a decision, the more important it seems to be that you make the right decision, which then almost precludes you from making a decision that's going to yield an outcome that you enjoy. There are no right decisions, right? There are decisions that lead to enjoyable outcomes and the decisions that lead to unenjoyable outcomes or uncomfortable outcomes, but there's no right and wrong around that. You know, why is comfort so important to us? Anyway, let's swing into what Jen was asking. I'd love to continue the conversation we had from last week's live call around big significant change transformation and how that is becoming increasingly more possible. My sense is that many big transformations don't stick because there is a lack of space and intentionality with the integration phase, post-transformation experience. Some people would also call that the maintenance phase or the transition phase, depending on the lens you're looking through. I completely agree with that, Jen. I think there is, in our society, in our sort of quick fix, instant gratification society, where we've all been trained to believe that things happened quickly and permanently, and that, you know, the cure is just one tablet away. You know, as an example, that people forget that transformation is a process, not a singular event. You know, change is a process, not an outcome, right? Change is a process, not an outcome. I know we like the idea that things have changed, but change is, there's never a finite moment where the change happened. It was a process. Even if that process only took milliseconds, it was still a process. Most change happens over longer periods of time. Excuse me. So the point is, there's an initial break that helps you sort of step out of the old way of being and you see the potential for a new way of being. But unless you consciously choose to anchor that in, to integrate that, to become it, to assimilate the changed state of being, more than likely you will slip back into the old. The draw of the habit of the old will pull you back. And so most people think that, oh, it wasn't for me, or I failed. It's not that you failed. The failure comes from not maintaining that change, from basically choosing again and again and again to step into the new, right? To basically consciously choose to live in the new, despite the fact that you're in some ways in this sort of transitional phase where there's a push-pull. Hey, Sister Georgie. Hey, Sister Stephanie. Where there's a sort of a fluxing between a new state of being and the old state of being. Many people are sort of so scared of failure that they'll just go back to the old state of being and call it it wasn't for them, right? So there is a lot to the integration phase that's important in all things, in establishing new habits, in establishing new relationships, in establishing new states of being. We have to be willing to be consistent with aligning ourselves with that outcome, with that desire, with that state of being. Because if we think it's just happened and now it's happened, and either it's happened or it hasn't, you know, like this, we love the human mind has been trained into this sort of, what's the word when it's either on or off, binary, into this binary mindset where it's either yes or no. We've done it or we haven't. People are struggle a lot to be happy with the idea that we've done it a little bit, but we haven't completed it. And that's true of everything. There's no real completions in this world. Nothing is finite because the universe is continually expanding. There's no end point. So there's no point at which you get to, you know, tick off the list and say, yes, I've done that and that's done and I don't need to do it again, right? Especially when it comes to transformational experiences, where it comes to growth. we have to keep working at everything, and things will continue to evolve all of the time. So yes, it's becoming increasingly more possible to change things more quickly, but that doesn't negate the fundamental idea that we have to maintain what we are changing into. And we have to be willing to apply some energy, some effort, some work to doing that. Now, work doesn't need to be hard work and uncomfortable and torturous, but it does require our attention, right? We have to bring our attention to the state of being we're choosing to step into consistently, and remind ourselves that that's the state of being that we are now engaged with or aligning with. We have to align with how we wish to be. Because if we just relax or rest, right, we will revert back to our predominant habitual way of being, right? Habits are very powerful. And so you can make an instant change or a quick change. I don't like the word instant because it's, you know, how instant is only, you know, down to the scale at which we can measure things. So something that appears instant just means that we, you know, don't have tools that can measure the process, right? We can't look at it in fine enough time steps. Nothing happens instantly. Everything happens in moments of transformation. And of course, the whole act of breaking it down into time steps is a little bit delusional anyway, and perhaps everything is instant. It's all just happening right now if we go out to a bigger perspective of the world. But that's not useful for us as a personality living on the planet. Hey, Sister Tonya Ball, on the call. So I think the choice to bring intentionality to the process of change is really very, very, very valuable. And it is generally understated. Most people think you do the work and then the change happens and then you get to enjoy the results. And by and large, we can do that. But as well as enjoying the results, you also have to maintain the change. Because if you are not willing to put the time into and recognize that there is a pull bringing you back to the old state of being, because it is generally more comfortable, at least at first. Even though you really, really wanted the change, on a level, it feels unsafe to be in a changed state of being. It feels unpredictable. It feels unusual. And so there is a part of us that would much prefer to go back to the old way of being because it's known and it's predictable. And even though it was uncomfortable there, it felt safer. So, and safety is a big thing for our ego. So it does require discipline to keep reminding ourselves that we are safe and that we are capable of maintaining the changed state of being. And that requires intentionality, and it requires discipline, basically, to maintain that, right? And I agree, a lot of people, you know, do the work to make a change and then fail to maintain the change and then feel that they can't change, right? Which is not true. They can change. They're just underestimating how much effort is required. And the effort doesn't need to be hard work. I'm not trying to make out that we need to earn change by the sweat, you know, that it's all about hard work. It's just about maintaining intentionality. It's about maintaining our focus, what we're looking at. Hey, Brother Glenn, what's important to us. That's what it all comes down to. You know, your attention is your greatest asset, right? Your attention is what is creating the world around you. What are you attentive to? What are you focused on? What are you aligning with? What are you consuming? And what are you viewing, right? What is influencing you? Where your attention goes is providing all of that very fundamental stimuli to how you are going to interact or receive the world around you, how you're going to perceive the world around you, Sister Jill. Hello, Happy New Year. So it's it's not taught in our society the importance of maintaining our intention, our attention, right? Where our attention is going. We are what's the word? Encouraged, right, to diffuse our attention with entertainment. And I'm not saying entertainment's wrong, but there is a huge amount of distraction in our world. We are, people, I know so many people can't even live in silence anymore. They have the television on, they have the radio on. Some people have the television and the radio on at the same time. They just have different noises coming from everywhere, taking their attention out, right? Because to be single-minded, to be focused, feels too empty for them, feels confronting for them, feels dangerous for them. They like to have noise all around them to help them feel safe in some ways, to help, almost it feels safer to be diffuse than to be focused, which is interesting. And this has only come about, because we used to be people who lived in forests and stuff and went out, and spent a lot of time in quiet and solitude and worked in the fields, etc., where there was space and where it was simple. It was simple. It was you and your tool and what you were doing in the field, and you'd spend hours and hours doing that, or waiting, hunting, or gathering. Simple activities that was just you alone, attentive to what you were doing. Right, very little distraction, and it was a simpler life that led to a lot more peace. And yet we've sort of been trained out of that. People, say that they're bored very, very quickly now. Very few people, especially in our Western culture, can sit on their own in silence for any length of time without going very uncomfortable, without feeling that they're going crazy or I'm going out of my mind, I'm so bored. What's happening when they say they're going out of their mind, they're so bored, is their mind is basically purifying itself, right? All of the crap that they've suppressed in there is coming out. It's giving them an opportunity to purify. But that's confronting, right? That's why people sit down to meditate and they say, I can't meditate, I can't sit still. Yeah, I get it, right? There's all of this energy in your body that hasn't had an opportunity to release. And so it's difficult at first to find the peace of stillness. But in that peace of stillness, we get to really focus our attention on what we're choosing. Sister Jen said, yes, maintaining intentionality and focus to remember that our attention is our power. Exactly, right? We've been talking a bit, Jen and I, about power, successive conversations, and attention is where your power lies, right? What you're putting your attention on is where your power lies. Deb said, I find the world too noisy, which is why I love living on my own in the country. It's space and peace. Yes, many of us are like that, and yet the vast majority of the society is not, it seems. So I have to remember that I'm talking always to a community of outliers generally who don't fit the mold. But it's interesting to look at how society has shaped the vast majority of the population, because I think that's very telling as to the influences that we are under. And that can give us clues as to why we are feeling uncomfortable in certain situations and help us find the fortitude to move through that discomfort without making ourselves wrong for feeling uncomfortable. So yeah, I also, Deb, love getting out in nature and being in quiet and stillness. It is definitely my happy place, and I feel, a little bit overwhelmed when there's a lot of noise and a lot of movement around me because I'm not used to it. And there's a part of my being that wants to process the information that's coming to me. And of course, you don't get to do that when there's so much information, and therefore you feel that you might be missing out on important information, which can induce a stress response. Whereas other people have given up on processing information, and they're just sponging it up, and it's just getting stored in their subconscious, which in time will lead to instabilities, in my opinion. Teresa said, I love the joy of doing one thing for a long time. It's such a joy. Yeah, exactly. It is such a joy when you get into that. It's like a meditation, right? It's like a therapy when you get into doing a simple thing over and over and over again. I love doing that in my yoga classes. We'll get into a very simple routine so that people don't have to think about what's coming next, and they can really let their body just move in a way that is therapeutic without having to think. And then they have this space, this expansiveness to just keep going with the routine, and I keep leading them with my voice so they don't have to think. They're getting told where to move next, and it's a simple repeating pattern in combination with the breath, and it induces such a relaxed state of being, right? By moving in time with your breath in a repetitive fashion. That's why a lot of people really enjoy swimming, because it is a simple movement repeated. You're looking at the black line on the bottom of the pool, right? There's very little stimulation, and you're coordinating your movement and your breath, and you just do it for whatever it is, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, an hour, and you're swimming, and it calms the mind down, it calms the body down, it reduces stress in the whole being, because it's a practice, it's a routine. People can do the same thing playing the piano or playing music, right? They're just engrossed in a simple thing. And while it can be stimulating on a level as you change the tune and the whatnot, ultimately it's a repetitive thing that you're not having to think of. Some people do exactly the same driving, especially if they're driving a routine, driving to and from work, and if the traffic's not too bad and unusual things aren't happening, they quite find this is an important time for them to wind down, to de-stress, because they're in a zone. They're doing a form of meditation. Jen said, funny how society has even warped truth, i.e. the power of focusing on one thing, and tied it up with productivity and pressure, thus manipulating the power of our attention in a way of what we think we need to do or should do. Yeah, so exactly, Jen. Society has created this idea, this time constraint over what we're doing, so that now we are continually trying to measure and compete, right, with how much we're doing. So instead of just being satisfied in the field, engrossed in the action of doing what you're doing and doing it well, it might be picking apples, it might be pulling weeds out from along the side of the corn, whatever you're doing in the field, right now there's a constraint over productivity, and you have to do it more quickly, and now you're looking at other people who are doing it, because you recognize that if you're the slowest one, that you might get quote unquote fired, right, or you might be ridiculed, etc., right? So society, the industrialists, created this idea of productivity to keep everyone in a state of stress, so that even people working in the factory doing repetitive tasks are now under pressure to do it. And it's no longer a meditative experience, but rather a stressful experience. And unfortunately, people have taken this into their leisure time, into their recreation. So I talked that example of the swimmer who can really find their rhythm and really be in the zone. But if they're worried about how fast they're going and continually looking at the clock every time they complete a lap or whatever, then you lose a lot of that therapy in the idea that you're trying to compete. You're trying to go faster. Even if you're only competing with yourself, competing with the clock, you're kind of creating a stress which is diffusing the therapeutic process of maintaining your attention on a simple process. Jill said, I find either being in the bath or when gardening, I switch into that receptive zone. Yeah, hot water, immersing yourself in water is always beneficial. That's a given. And getting your hands in the earth is also very, very grounding, because unfortunately these days we all walk around, or most of us walk around in some form of rubberized or synthetic soled shoe, and so we're not grounding ourselves very regularly to the earth, and thus the opportunity to put our hands in the earth is very, very grounding for us and very, very therapeutic, because we're not actually getting to do it normally as we just get around in the world barefoot. And of course, even being barefoot in your house generally is not so great, because most of our houses are insulated from the earth with various products, our carpet, our vinyl flooring, etc. Right? Very few of us are walking on earthen or stone floors anymore, and hence, and of course, don't go out and stand on the grass barefoot. Deb said, I used to love swimming, haven't done it since 2020. My fear of catching protein spikes from shared waters has stopped me. Yeah, let go of the fear, Deb. Swimming. I wouldn't worry about protein spikes. Unfortunately, you know, and I was going to talk about this. I was thinking just yesterday as I was working, I'm actually building a deck at the moment, talking about, you know, the therapy of doing simple tasks, although what I was doing yesterday wasn't that simple because I was setting it all up. But we have to be very, very careful, I think, with controlled opposition as we move forward. You know, it is time for us all to assume our power as individual sovereign beings and to be, quote unquote, a little bit more non-compliant with the rules and the dictates of what's going to be coming to us. And I believe in the future we're going to see even more societal pressure to conform with various different agendas or hoops, if you like, that the authoritarian beings are going to keep trying to induce a stress-based response from the society and get them to keep jumping through hoops, right, doing crazier and crazier things. And the way that they police this is by creating social pressure that if you don't do it, then you're being irresponsible and jeopardizing others, right? Just like we saw with the COVID thing about, you know, if you don't get the jab or don't isolate or don't wear a mask, etc., that you're jeopardizing the older, more vulnerable people in society, right? And yet then on counter narratives that draw people in who see the error in that and choose not to comply with the main form of authority, tend to get sucked into other smaller authorities, which quite often are planned opposition, right? That create a whole heap of other dictates and fear-based narratives, right? So rather than choosing to not comply out of a sense of love and sovereignty, people choose not to comply out of a sense of fear, right? And so now they're scared of getting the injection. They're scared of going out and socializing because other people are shedding protein spikes, etc. And it's not useful, right? It's not beneficial. You're basically still losing your sovereignty, even though you've made a choice not to comply with the mainstream. You're now making other choices that are based in fear rather than love. And so I think we're going to see this battle, if you like, playing out, or this mechanism playing out even more strongly in the coming years, where there will be more hoops to jump through, and many members of society will jump through them, and then, you know, all the virtue signaling and the social pressure to be part of the good people who do what they're told. And then there will also be this counter culture, right? Because what the powers that be want is division. So this counter culture of not complying, but then they create a whole heap of rules within the not complying group, and it becomes a war, right? And so there is no love anywhere anymore, right? And that's exactly what we don't need. Those of us who are choosing, and it's not about choosing not to comply, it's about choosing to love ourselves enough to follow our own knowing, right? It's not about not complying with authority for the sake of not complying with authority. It's about choosing to love ourselves enough that we do what we know is right for us, right? And that might be complying and it might be not complying, but it's not run by fear, it's run by love. And that's, I think, the most important thing moving forward is for us to recognize the power of love, and to trust that. My two words for this year moving forward is trust and love, and basically together it's trust, love. Trust the power in love, and to do things from a foundation of love rather than allow myself to get caught up in any sort of fear-based narrative. And whether that is to comply or not to comply, is not the point. It's, am I loving myself through whatever decision feels most appropriate for me, irrespective of what authorities are saying and what various authorities are saying, our governments, etc., and our medical system and all that authority, which is easy to vilify, but there's also going to be very much more conducive, or conducive is not the word I'm looking for, much more appealing forms of authority, right? Spiritual community, etc., which will also be propagating various rules, right? What you should do and what you shouldn't do. And we have to recognize that a lot of these spiritual communities have been infiltrated by the same powers that are running the government. And so not to be fearful of all of that, and it's not that that's necessarily the truth, but ultimately what's most important is that you follow your own heart and not to get caught up in trying to get it right, in trying to follow the dictates or the mandates or the suggestions or the requirements of any particular group, because ultimately that's disempowering. Glenn said, ultimately it's absolute faith in the power of love. Exactly, Glenn. That's exactly right. Teresa said, yes, fear is still fear and creates lack instead of abundance. Exactly. Abundance comes from aligning with love, right? Love is abundance and fear is from lack. So, yeah, hopefully that answered that. Awesome conversation. What's the time? Yep, we've done it. It's a good place to wind it up. So, yes, love yourself enough to use your attention wisely. Limit what you put your attention on if it's not useful, e.g. fear-based news, and various dictates and mandates, etc., and put your attention on what feels nurturing and nourishing. Put your attention on your own relationship with life itself and your own relationship with people who you enjoy in your life. Be attentive to what you love, right? What you put your attention on is where your energy is going and what will grow and thrive and be more prosperous, more abundant in your life. So allow your attention to be on love, right? And joy and expansive things, rather than on trying to get it right, trying to figure it out, right? No one can figure this shit fight out, right? You've just got to recognize that the world is going to get more chaotic moving forward, more intense, more ridiculous, right? And I mean that literally. It's going to become more and more ridiculous out there in the external world as this old structure falls apart. So our job is to maintain our attention on what we are creating within ourselves, the energy we're choosing to align with, and radiating that energy out and allowing our actions to be in alignment with our energy. That's what's important. So, awesome. Deb said, looks like I'll start swimming again. I started this call in a spa. Now I'm in a saltwater swimming pool. I had some visitors. Perfect. So yeah, and you don't have to necessarily go to the pool, Deb. You know, swim in the ocean, swim somewhere you have access to. You know, but yes, swimming laps is some people really enjoy swimming laps, and I wouldn't allow fear to stop you doing that. Oh, just splashed my glasses. This bloody water bottle. Hey, Sister Emma Rose. Anyway, I'm winding it up. Don't want it to go on too long. Part of my intention is to keep these to 30 minutes, but I always seem to have trouble doing so. Yes, so keep your attention on love, my friends, and allow love to be powerful in your life, and recognize that your attention is very powerful as well. Much, much love to you all. I will speak to you again this time next week from the same place. Bye for now.